On my last use of this kite, 8 meter, I noticed a loss of air from the front strut. Now, it's because I've got the habit of closing the struts off during my session that losing air from one strut is not going to be a problem. I can continue flying the kite and it will behave as normal. But now we're going to investigate as to why this is losing air, find the problem and see what we can do to fix it. Follow me through as we go through the steps. Each brand of kite has different connectors for the valves. Tie it well so that you know it's not going to slip off. The line and the connector is now inside the strut. We can now go to the end. On opening the end of the strut, I can see that there's a lot of sand inside the bladder. I'll show you how to remove this sand very shortly. Now we're going to just pull the bladder out of the strut, making sure that the line follows along the inside behind it. Now we're going to try and remove the sand. Try not to stroke it down with your fingers, allow the sand just to fall with gravity. Then when it comes nearer the valve, just try to make the valve the lowest point in the bladder and work the sand to the lowest point. Blow the strut back up again. It's very handy or useful to have another strut rubber. If you don't have a second hand or spare strut rubber, you might want to pinch one off the kite itself. The more pressure we can put inside of this, the better. Once we have the pressure, we can fold the hose and simply tie this up and it'll hold the air long enough to find the leak. We can remove the pump. Now we're free to move around how we want. One thing I've noticed on this bladder, I've got myself a bulge. I don't actually know what causes the bulge, but normally this shouldn't be here. That should have been one continuous piece. If you were lucky enough to find the hole with the soap test or the bucket of water test, you simply, with a black marker, put a circle around the actual center point of where the leak is coming from. Once you've done your circle, drop it back into the water to make sure that the point is in the center of the circle. This means that when you clean it and dry it, you only need to put a small patch just on the center of that circle. Unfortunately with this one, the hole must be really small because there's not enough pressure I can put in the bladder outside of the actual strut casing to show me where the leak is. So now we have to go even deeper into the problem. Because the bladder has this expansion here and the material is really thin, I thought it best not to waste any more time in trying to repair this one. I went to my friend at the Cabrina dealer, and they always keep second-hand ones from kites that get destroyed, and he's given me a new one, and the material on this feels a lot better quality than the old one. So I'm now going to insert the new one. Fold the bladder in a concertina effect with the valve in the top center position. The strut, have the valve in the top central position and flatten out the material so that you're going to lay it perfectly flat so that the valve will appear here. Fold the connector end of the bladder so that it is slim to enable you to get it through that first piece of the strut. Once the first part has been pulled through to the strut, the valve is here now, the rest should slide through very simple. The principle still applies to keep this as flat as possible because the valve will remain on the top. Once you have the valve in its place, twisting is not going to occur. But what you have to remember is that there is a piece of plastic or bladder from this point to here with an angle on it. As you can imagine, when we were pulling it from the valve, this piece of plastic is tucked in underneath the valve. If at this point you blow the strut up with air, what's going to happen is that this tuck is going to be pressed against the side of the outer casing material, and it's not going to be able to go forward. Once the valve is in its point, what you can do is try and use your hands to massage it forward, then connect your spare rubber hose, put a little bit of air in it, bring all the air to the front point here, and then with the other hand push the air up to the front so that it'll push the tucked bladder back up into that front section. So I'm going to have a go at that now, and I'll get right back to you. So keep massaging the bladder until it gets right up into the very far corners. This takes a bit of time, but you've got to get it right. You'll be able to feel with your hand whether there's any bladder behind the outer material. Once you're happy that it's in place, you can put a little bit more air in, and you'll be able to feel that it's solid. There's no loose holes of material. At this point, massage all the way along. And now we can put the end back on, the cap, the sock, and connect this back up again and do a full-blown test, of course closing the end off. Let's see how the test goes. As usual, I put the kite on its back with some sand in a bag. It's a good idea to take this opportunity to run your lines, your bridle lines, in some clean water, especially the pigtails. Over time they get brittle and hard, and they'll start to crack right in the place here, and then you'll be needing to replace them. With the amount of salt and sand that accumulates on the bridle lines over time, it makes good sense that any moment or opportunity you have to give them a good wash down, dry them off, and while that test is still running, they'll dry in the air before you pack it away.